Hi, welcome back. Thank you so much for checking out my show. I'm Natalie Brunell, and I'm talking to leading voices in Bitcoin and macroeconomics. This podcast does not provide financial advice. Before I share this episode with some of the greatest of the great in Bitcoin, I do want to share a message from my sponsors first. This episode is powered by the Bitcoin Conference 2022. It's going to be held in Miami this year. It's almost here, and it's the biggest Bitcoin event in the world. All 4 days will be jam-packed with exclusive content, exciting announcements, and an incredible lineup of Bitcoin speakers, artists, and leaders. Day one is Industry Day for enterprising Bitcoiners who are looking to build a business or career within the ecosystem. Days 2 and 3 are General Conference Days featuring speakers like El Salvador President Nayib Bukele, who has promised a big surprise at the event, as well as CEOs like Michael Saylor, Elizabeth Stark, Jack Mallers, Adam Back, and hundreds more. The conference caps off on the 4th day with the world's first and largest Bitcoin music festival, Sound Money Fest, headlined by rapper and fellow Bitcoiner Logic. You're also going to hear from Steve Aoki, CL, Run the Jewels, deadmau5, and many more. Last year's conference sold out, and this year's is on pace to be 3 times larger, so make sure you grab your tickets before it's too late. Head to b.tc/conference and use the code COINSTORIES for 10% off your pass. This episode is also sponsored by OKCoin, one of my favorite places to dollar cost average. And they just launched a new initiative called Crypto for All, aimed at democratizing knowledge and access to Bitcoin. OKCoin is one of the fastest growing and most secure global cryptocurrency exchanges that serves all your needs for Bitcoin and is committed to investing in educational content, funding crypto developers and entrepreneurs from underrepresented groups, and helping more diverse talent work on crypto ecosystem projects and careers. OKCoin has actually contributed more than $1 million to Bitcoin core devs and counting, has one of the most active Lightning nodes, and recently launched Sats mode. Head to go.okcoin.com/Natalie. And when you sign up, you can get $10 in Bitcoin. All right. I'm super excited for this episode. I've actually been working on it for a little bit because it features some of the greatest names in Bitcoin about why they have conviction in BTC as opposed to the other cryptocurrencies. You know, a lot of people ask me about the other cryptocurrencies, whether I invest in altcoins. The answer is no. So I wanted to put together kind of a short compilation of interviews with the best and brightest of Bitcoin about why they say Bitcoin over crypto. All right, get ready because this episode features Preston Pysh, Robert Breedlove, Max Keiser, Aleks Svetski, Mark Moss, Cory Klippsten, Alex Gladstein. Now, some of them actually invested in alts in the past, made money, lost money, but ultimately came to the conclusion that just one perfect money exists, and that is Bitcoin. Thanks so much for checking out this episode. Make sure you're subscribed to my page and like this video so other people see it. And without further delay, here's why Bitcoin, not altcoins.
I only own Bitcoin. I really don't care what people own in their portfolio. I mean, you could make the argument that there's a lot of stocks that are, worse than shitcoins these days. But I own Bitcoin. The primary reason why I own that, not anything else, is really a couple different reasons. The first one is just policy risk. I have no idea what Gary Gensler is about to do, but I suspect that he's going to declare most of these protocols as securities. When he does that, I think that there's going to be a huge reckoning as to the valuations of a lot of these things, and how that's going to be enforced is probably through the exchanges, or at least that's what the SEC has hinted at. And so I think that alone is cause for concern. The other thing that I think is more important in the discussion is we're going from a global monetary system that was completely based on centralization. And I think with the big transition and what this is all about is we're moving to something that's completely decentralized. And so when you're looking at which money is the most secure and which one is going to garner the most trust, I think that the winner of that is going to be the one that has the most decentralization, so that no government entity or sovereign entity can step in and try to manipulate it or change it. When I look at all of the protocols that are trying to represent themselves as the best choice of decentralized money, the only thing that I have found that in my opinion is truly decentralized, that has a flawless record of not being manipulated or changed or debased, is Bitcoin. When I think about how that migration from this old system to the new system is going to go, Um, I think the thing that a lot of market participants don't have an appreciation for is the sheer size of the existing monetary system, specifically the fixed income portion of the market. Because when you look at that and you see that it's anywhere, you hear a lot of different numbers. The one I'm very comfortable sharing is 100 trillion, but some say that the number is as high as 300 trillion for fixed income. When you have an appreciation for how large that is and the type of people that own fixed income today, which yields practically nothing, they are an extremely conservative group of holders that are just trying to retain the buying power of that 100 to 300 trillion dollar pie of capital. And so what do you think those people are going to do if they start to suspect that the existing system or the units that measure the existing system are going down in flames? I kind of think they're going to go to the thing that is conservative, the thing that will protect their buying power, the thing that's actually completely decentralized, that's backed up by tens of thousands of nodes worldwide, that can continue to run into perpetuity. When you talk about decentralization, a lot of the times you got to consider, is it still going to be decentralized 10 years from now based on the sheer size of the blocks and the size of the protocol? And when I think through a system that can do that, Bitcoin has that in spades, and it can do it 20 years from now. It's still going to be decentralized because the code base of people being able to run their full nodes, heck, they're probably going to be able to do it on smartphones if they want. So those are some of the really important considerations. And the reason why I think so few people necessarily they're involved in a whole lot of these altcoins and all these other things is because I don't think that they necessarily have a deep appreciation or understanding of how big the existing financial system is and how broke the existing financial system is. And I think if a person would really try to research and study those areas and the decentralization piece, I think that they might have a deeper appreciation for how profound Bitcoin's probably going to be in the future.
Wow, that's a great explanation. I really appreciate that, and I think it's really interesting because I almost don't think that Bitcoin should be grouped with any of them. We have this umbrella term of cryptocurrency, but I think that's almost a misnomer. First of all, I see Bitcoin as a digital asset and digital property as opposed to necessarily something that we need to consider a currency right now. And all the others, I mean, I just came back from a blockchain conference in UAE, and it was like they're trying to change and revolutionize all these industries, but it has nothing to do with a store of value or sound money or fixing the money problem. It's all about kind of like, changing the art world or tokenizing this company. It's like all tech companies, right? I mean, it's almost like you can't equate them to Bitcoin.
The fundamental question you got to ask yourself is, why do I need a decentralized ledger for this, you name it, right? And if you don't need a decentralized ledger, and a lot of the times running a localized ledger of whatever you're doing is going to be more cost efficient. It's going to be faster than what they're trying to do. And so I think people have to ask themselves why, and then they have to ask themselves why 4 more times to fully get an appreciation for like, why do I need this? What problem in the real world is this actually solving that already has a solution that's going to give me a 10x advantage, and like why people would want to be doing this. Now, I'm not one of these people that are going to say that in 5 or 10 years from now that some type of protocol might percolate out of this that could be useful. It very well could. I just don't necessarily see the 10x gain like you got right now with Bitcoin and solving the monetary unit global meltdown kind of issue, which I think is really pressing and really kind of the whole reason that all this technology was formed and discovered in the first place. So could it become something? Absolutely. Have I seen anything that's really kind of get me excited or suggest that I need to be over in this space? Not yet. And I think it's important to emphasize this too. I'm one that looks at the risk reward, and I'm looking at the asymmetry of the gain, and I'm saying Bitcoin is just a home run. Like it doesn't really, you really don't have to do anything spectacular to have just ridiculous returns that you'll never get in the rest of your life, right? For the amount of risk that I think a person's assuming by owning it today. And so I'm looking at it from that lens and I'm saying, okay, let's just say that this project over here could do it and it would give me an extra 10% annualized, like, but it comes with all this risk, right? The policy risk, the you name it risk of all these things. Why in the world would I assume that for such a minuscule amount of return when we're already talking about something that's probably going to do 100% a year?
Right. Yeah, I know it's interesting that people already are just saying, well, it's too late with Bitcoin. It's not going to have the gains that it used to at the beginning, and all these
Yeah,
new
that's
coins could.
yeah.
Last question, your take on NFTs?
I think that the idea of something that would require a decentralized ledger to have something discrete, a digital discrete, whatever, people are doing it with art today because that's just, I think, something everybody can understand. But when you think about it, like, I'm sorry, if I'm going to get a piece of artwork, I'm going to get something that I can literally hang on my wall, opposed to something I can store on my computer that I could just download from somebody else's website. Like, and a lot of the times, I think a lot of these NFTs aren't coming with property rights where the person who owns it can actually collect revenue off of the ownership of the thing that they're purchasing. So I think just because you can do something doesn't mean that it has value today. In the future, could they be doing sports tickets with this stuff? Sure. I kind of, even in that example, which I think is one of the best examples for NFTs, is like sporting event tickets. Today, I mean, I just went to a game and it had a QR code that was constantly changing, right?
Yeah.
In order to go into the event, like I can't take a picture of it and send it to my friend because it has to be a dynamic QR code. So like, why does that need to be on a decentralized protocol? Again, going back to that core question. And I can't tell you why. Maybe it moves in that direction. I don't know.
Yeah, I love how you basically said it's solutions looking for problems.
Yeah.
This is something I wrote an entire piece about a year and a half ago because it's kind of a complicated question to answer. You know, if Bitcoin is just this open source code that anybody can copy and paste, how can you reconcile that with it having what Bitcoiners claim to be perfect scarcity or fixed supply? It's just not an intuitive answer, but you have to really come to understand, I think, the social layer of money, which is that it is a social construct ultimately, and that it's people choosing to adopt and use a money that best serves their individual self-interest, that collectively the thing becomes money, right? That's what gold was essentially, is one way to think about it, is the hardest commodity to produce. So people hold the thing that no one else can produce more of, right? It's a game theoretic focal point, or a Schelling point, as many people have called it. And, you know, again, it's a long, complicated answer. I know we don't have a lot of time today. The piece I wrote was called "The Number Zero in Bitcoin." I think people could drill into that. That's the best analogy I found for it, is just something that the nature of an idea that makes a system so much more economic and higher value, frankly, to its users. Like the analogy I use of a zero-based numeral system, I think the same is true for money. And I just don't see how you can add any additional value proposition to the users of money into Bitcoin, right? There's the few shortcomings that it has. Like we could say, for instance, it's non-anonymous at the base layer. This is a purposeful trade-off made for Bitcoin to have a fixed supply of 21 million. But that anonymity, it appears to me, is being solved, for instance, on layer 2 on things like Lightning. So long as all the useful properties of money are gathered into one technology, which I see that they are in Bitcoin, that there's no real way to disrupt it or introduce something that is superior for users. And then the final nail in the coffin, like, okay, that's pretty strong resistance to disruption for Bitcoin against everything else. This is everything else: dollars, gold, alternative crypto assets. The final nail in the coffin is Bitcoin is open source code. So it does have this ability to inherit or adopt useful features or market proven features from other crypto assets. So even if, a Monero or whatever currency figured out some very useful algorithm or algorithmic update to increase privacy or anything else, for instance, Bitcoin does retain the ability to absorb that feature into its UTXO set. So I think the combination of all those factors makes Bitcoin very unique and highly resistant to disruption.
Well, right now the price is pretty choppy, and last year Bitcoin performed well, but a lot of the crypto assets outperformed it. So why do you think that is? Why do you think money is pouring into other assets as opposed to Bitcoin?
Yeah, this is not surprising in the least, actually. First of all, this is somewhat normal in Bitcoin bull runs, is that, people make a lot of money in Bitcoin. They diversify some of those gains into alternative crypto assets. This drives that kind of virtuous or vicious feedback loop where, prices are rising, people are chasing prices. They think they're trying to catch the next Bitcoin or whatever coin's going to go 100 or 1000x. So this process kind of feeds back on itself until, of course, Bitcoin goes into a retrace, especially a prolonged retrace. Then you see that liquidity cut the opposite direction, right? When Bitcoin's down, say 80+% in a prolonged bear market, most of these projects are down 99+%. So they just get annihilated. The second reason I think it's going to be even more pronounced in this cycle and potentially, and again, cycle maybe not even makes sense anymore. It appears maybe the 4-year cycle of Bitcoin has broken down. We don't know what's going to happen, but I was in the camp of cycles up until this quarter. Now I'm kind of thinking the cyclical pattern is broken down to some extent. But let's just say, as Bitcoin retraces, these other assets are going to retrace a lot. But the secondary thing to that is we have more inflation in the dollar than ever, more inflation in currencies worldwide than ever. And if you study what happens to people psychologically during inflationary periods, I mean, they go crazy, actually. This has been something that's spinning on Twitter recently, is this mass formation psychosis that I think Dr. Robert Malone, the guy that appeared on Joe Rogan, he mentioned it. I've written about and drawn some comparisons to past historical periods where we've had heavy inflations and people actually going crazy, like the Salem witch trials, which a lot of people know about. We've heard of it. There was a huge multiple decades of inflationary monetary manipulation prior to that event.
Oh, wow.
But that notwithstanding, it's like, okay, it drives people crazy. You could maybe argue yes or no on that. But what it certainly does, very pragmatically, is it induces people to gamble more, right? Like your money is losing, and this is just intuitively obvious, the faster your money loses value, the more you're going to try to put that money to work in something more and more risky, right? If it's losing 5% a year, you need to hit 10% annual performance to net 5. If it's losing 10%, well, all of a sudden you need to increase your performance to 15 or 20 to net 5 or 10. So your inflation's pushing market actors further along the risk curve. And that's to say closer towards just outright gambling. And if you look at what alternative crypto assets are, I would argue their main use case, the main market proven use case so far, is as gambling devices. Mm-hmm. So I see more and more people being pushed into these typically referred to as speculative positions as inflation worsens.
That's interesting. Some of the critics of Bitcoin have said that Bitcoin is boring. It has no utility. So people are supporting other projects that they can build on top of and comparing it to sort of like people aren't investing in gold, they're investing in Google. What are your thoughts on that?
I think when it comes to money, you want boring money. That's the money that wins. Ultimately, it's the most stable economic foundation or the most unshakable monetary policy, if you want to use that term, or just very simply the most predictably supplied asset, right? That's what gold was. It's like we knew no matter what anyone did, no matter what country went to war or who passed a law or who seized what, over the longest course of human history, we had a roughly 2% increase year over year in the gold supply. So that was predictable, long-term, apolitical inflation. Bitcoin's has taken that, what gold approximated, and perfected it, right? We know with perfect certainty the supply of Bitcoin today, tomorrow, and forever, frankly. So boredom's good in money. Like if I'm going to hold my wealth somewhere, like you go into the market as an entrepreneur to take risk, right? connect capital and ideas to try and map your present action to future market data and produce something good and useful for people. So in that journey, there's a lot of risk, there's a lot of reward. You can go to zero, you can go to, Bezos level kind of thing. This very high risk environment, but you want to keep your winnings or the spoils of war, if you will, somewhere that is insulated from that market risk. That's what the whole purpose of money is. So boring is great for money. Whoever says that they just don't understand money.
So out of curiosity then, Bitcoin has pretty much only existed in a QE environment, and arguably the Fed has to do something with the inflation that we're seeing. So, they might finally raise rates, and a lot of people think that might get all the markets crashing down. Mm-hmm. What do you think about that? How will that impact not just Bitcoin, but crypto at large? Because obviously what you mentioned was that when Bitcoin draws down, the alts draw down even further.
Absolutely. You're completely correct that we've only been in an expansionary monetary environment all of Bitcoin's life. Happy birthday, Bitcoin, by the way. I think he's 13 today. Is that right?
Yeah, teen.
13. So it will be interesting to see how central banks and policymakers respond to inflation. It seems evident to me the narrative has shifted really quick on inflation, almost more quickly than it has anything else in this crazy world lately, where they're like, oh, there's none. Oh, it's transitory. Oh, it's here. It's like, it just over 3 months, it would just flipped. We're only getting started. It takes a long time. Here's another way to think about it is we're in very uncertain times. No one knows what's going on, right? We've got unemployment all-time high in the US, but stock market at all-time high. Nothing makes sense. I mean, I could go on forever about all the nonsense in the world. I'm sure everyone has their own version of it. What do you do when things are uncertain? You hoard or hold money. You save money because money is an option on everything. So when things are uncertain, you naturally want a lot of options. So a lot of this currency debasement that's taken place, I think there's been a large reservation demand created. People are holding cash due to this rising uncertainty in the world. But when you start to flip rates, it could get really ugly really fast, right? Inflation is going to start being more pronounced, especially if we go back to any semblance of normal. People will just start spending again. They'll think things are normal again. Inflation will then pop even more. Especially against the backdrop of these supply chain disruptions, which take a long time to wash out. And at that point, you may see kind of a move of desperation where they'll try to increase rates, pulling like a 1970s Volcker move, where they're trying to break the back of inflation. And that's going to send things. It's a very leveraged credit structure in the world today is what we have. So that would really put a lot of downward pressure on that house of cards. I don't know how quickly it could fall apart, but I would be worried. So punchline action items in my mind is like, continue to produce more than you consume. Ideally, you're saving money every month or week through your business or employment. I would advocate holding some dollar position or fiat currency position as an option. If things do start to draw down very quickly, you can actually go into the market and buy things at a discount and then keep stacking sats. So it seems like crazy simple, but there's a lot of, I guess, power and resiliency in that simple strategy.
There's two things a couple things I'd say, but one, what I would say is like, what is it that you're trying to do? So I grew up in a political home. I grew up thinking I'd go to war one day. I grew up disillusioned to the system. I gave up, and then I found a tool that we could win. That's my goal. I got kids. I am not happy with the direction the world is going. A year and a half ago, after the pandemic happened, and then, well, we're still in it or whatever, but I remember we're sitting at the kitchen table and my daughter goes, well, at least we can go outside now. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. What do you mean, at least we can go outside? Like, I grew up in a world that was free. We didn't ask for permission to go outside. And my kids, I mean, they've lived under this 2 years. A good majority of their life has been like this. Their lives are ruined. They don't go to school anymore. And I'm not okay with it. I vowed that I will work every minute to the rest of my life to make sure that this World Economic Forum agenda does not work. And so that's what I'm focused on. And I believe there's only one tool that we have to fight against that, and that's Bitcoin. So a couple of reasons why. I think one, you have to understand a lot of different disciplines. I get it. It's difficult. But if you understand how monetary history works or monetary system, so gold is a base settlement layer. Gold is very slow. It's hard to move around. Nick Badia, Time Value of Money, does a very good breakdown this in layered money in the book. And so then we have, base money, and then we have layer 2, paper gold certificates, makes it easy. So that scales in layers, but also the internet also scales in layers as well. So you have like TCP/IP protocol. And then if you want more things, SMTP or HTTPS, you build that on top on layers. And so that's the way it works. The other thing is, again, history is kind of my thing. So all my video content I do is always based around history. And if you look at the way technological revolutions or technologies roll out, they're always different technologies, but they always roll out the same. So for example, in the automobile boom, very quickly, automobiles seemed like a great idea. Very quickly, there was 250 automobile manufacturers. But the problem was there was no market who was going to buy all those cars. And 2, there was no infrastructure. So there was no service stations, there was no roads, there was no whatever. And so they all went out of business. 3 remained. And then eventually it got built back up. Internet was kind of the same way. In 1995 was the first IPO, Netscape. It brought all this venture capital money in. And so from 1995 to 2000, it just blew up. And they built every .com in the world, pets.com, webvan.com, et cetera. The problem was the same 2 things. 1, there was no market. By the year 2000, less than 10% of people had ever bought anything online. 2, there was no infrastructure. The internet was too slow. You couldn't even use it to buy anything online at the time. And so it all went away. Now, it doesn't mean they were wrong. Like we probably buy most of our pet stuff online today. And so I see the same thing happening. I saw the same thing happening with Bitcoin and blockchain. And so I was the one, I'll admit it, in 2016 saying it's blockchain, not Bitcoin. But I realized very quickly how I was wrong. And it scales in layers. And what happened was the same thing. We had Bitcoin came, and then you had all this venture capital money coming in through ICOs. And they were all trying to do the webvan.com and the pets.com. And they were trying to solve problems, but there was no infrastructure and there was no market, the same thing. And so just like the internet, during the internet days in the 90s, all these private companies were saying, we can't trust our data on the internet. We need to build our own private intranet. And they spent billions of dollars to build these intranets. They're all gone today. And now everything's on one TCP/IP protocol. I think everybody understands that we have a TCP/IP protocol and trillions of dollars of value, trillions of website applications are built on one protocol. Does that make me a TCP/IP protocol maximalist? It's just, I understand how that works. And so we have a value transfer protocol like Bitcoin, and it's now scaling in layers. And so now using layer 2, like Lightning, every other attribute that these other cryptocurrencies have can now be done on that platform. The ones that need to be. And I say need to be because just like other things, everything, we don't need to solve every problem in the world with the blockchain. Not everything needs to be decentralized. People don't like that. Not everything needs to be decentralized. If a supply chain upgrades their software, if the bank upgrades their software, why would I get excited about that? So everyone's like, oh, Ripple, they help banks transfer money. Can you tell me the software that banks use today? Because why are you excited about a bank software? Well, this is going to manage supply chain. Great. What are the top 3 supply chain management softwares? Why do you care about that? Well, stocks are going to be tokenized one day. Sure. Okay. So I own Tesla in my E-Trade account. Eventually, I own Tesla through my E-Trade account, but it's on a blockchain. What difference does that make to me? Mm-hmm. Like none of this stuff matters. When we were at Out Basel, one night I was out, not with you, but I went to this NFT thing and they said, hey, Mark, I'm a big fan of your channel. I want to talk to you about this NFT project we're doing. I said, great. He said, we're doing real estate NFTs. I'm like, oh, well, I'm a real estate investor. Great. And I'm in Bitcoin. Tell me about it. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to create these NFTs for real estate. And everybody here, like at this party, could own one NFT for a piece of real estate. I said, oh, so is that like when I own an apartment through an LLC and everybody could buy a share of the LLC? Like, this is not revolutionary. It's not groundbreaking. Right. Like whether they own it through a share of stock or through a token, what difference does it make to me?
Right.
What's revolutionary is that we've solved the oldest problem that mankind has ever had. From day one, the oldest problem that man has suffered from is, how do I secure my private property? That's it. How do I secure my private property in a way that I control it? No one can inflate it or steal it. And if I want to send it to you, nobody can stop it, block it, or prevent it. That's the oldest problem in history. Bitcoin has solved that.
Mhm.
Whether my Tesla stock is in E-Trade or on a blockchain in E-Trade, that doesn't matter to me. It doesn't change the world.
Mhm.
But being able to hold my assets does. Taking away the Fed's power to inflate the monetary supply and cause all these distortions in the market, that changes the world. And so when I talk to these people, so I was speaking last weekend, I was at an event in Houston. I got to share the stage with Ron Paul. I was very excited about that.
Yes.
He started the movement in the Fed, which got me going. I gave a talk about why in the Fed and why the Fed is so bad and what they've done. And then, of course, I presented Bitcoin as a solution. And I said, Bitcoin, not crypto. And I know you're going to hate it. Come talk to me. And I probably had 100 people that had to come ask me why. And they commonly would say, but Mark, you don't understand. Look how much money I've made in Cardano or Polkadot or fill in the blank, right? And I just say, look, we're not the same. Like, I get it as a gambler. Like, you want to gamble penny stocks, or you want to gamble on the Sunday football game, or you want to whatever. Like, I get that, and that's cool. And I hope you have fun, and I hope you make money. But nobody ever thinks that penny stock is going to become an NYSE listed stock, right? So have fun with it. Cool. Like, you're making money, but that's not my goal. I'm trying to change the world. I'm trying to make the world a better place for my kids. And the only way to do that is to get rid of the Fed. And there's only one option that we have, and that's Bitcoin.
For me, I'm a student of political science and governance. And I think that one should separate Bitcoin from all the other cryptocurrencies, because it's different in one very important way, in that a small group of people cannot decide to change the monetary rules. And I think that differentiation can get obscured or overlooked because we're very early. And we're very early in this era of decentralized digital money. And right now, it's not really like apparent to the market that Bitcoin's value set is any different from, Dogecoin or whatever. That hasn't like sunk in yet. And that's almost to be expected. I mean, when you as a person first learn about this industry, it is described as crypto or blockchain, or it's just very confusing. And there's like all these different things. And it really takes a lot of proof of work. It takes a lot of time and effort to like start to uncover. And, you can think of like someone digging up a dinosaur skeleton, and they're like brushing each little piece of each little finger bone. And they're like starting to see the big picture, but it takes like so long for them to dig it out, right? That's kind of the case here. And, most investors, including big institutional investors and the smartest VCs in the world or whatever, they still don't really get it. And that, again, that's fine. Then that's to be expected. And for a lot of people, there's like economic incentives to not get it, right? Or to posture differently. Because with Bitcoin, because no one can change the monetary rules, you don't have like rent seeking, right? But if I can just create, if you and I can just create a new coin today and make 100 million of them, we can rent seek. We can like allocate 60% of them to our friends or whatever. So that kind of behavior is highly lucrative, right? So that's why you see a lot of these VC firms and a lot of like early stage investors or whatever, paying very close attention to this industry, because it's very easy to make a lot of dollars very quickly by just creating money, right? But this is why Bitcoin was created by Satoshi Nakamoto, was to create a monetary asset that no one could manipulate in that way or corrupt in that way, that would be public and open and known to all in terms of its issuance schedule. And we all know how much is going to be released into the world in 5 years and 10 years and 20 years. You cannot say the same thing about any other cryptocurrency or fiat currency. The issuance and supply is going to be up to a small group of people to determine. And that to me is like the biggest difference between Bitcoin and the alts.
The token narrative got dispelled in 2017, 2018, right? Because everyone thought you could tokenize everything. And we all realized that every single token is basically an economic instrument, in which case it is competing against Bitcoin. And no one in their right mind, so basically, the market represents a consent, like at least a mass consensus. And the mass consensus is that we need superior money. And as a result, like Bitcoin is superior as a money to all of these other things. So they will all end up failing. Like every single cryptocurrency is just a digital reincarnation of the fiat system. It's issued by some authority, whether a foundation or an organization, a group, or whatever the case is. So all it is, it's just fiat in the digital realm, arguably less efficient. So we know that is stupidity, and issuing any form of token just competes against Bitcoin, so it's just going to lose, right? But then, the Web3 thing. I mean, I haven't been on Twitter too actively recently, but I just saw this morning all the stuff with Jack and everything, and it's just hilarious. So, I mean, I saw Mike Damas or whatever his name is, or Dudas or whatever, him kind of saying that Web3 engineers are brave. And I was like, Jesus, Julian Assange was brave, right? Like Ross Ulbricht was brave. Like that's the definition of brave. Like people who actually went up against the state. Satoshi was brave. Some dweeb building, a little program on Ethereum is the furthest thing I could imagine in my life from the word brave. So for me, that's just all, again, intellectual fellatio at best. It's just a bunch of people building things. Like, I mean, I still to this day, honestly, I can't think of any problem that has been solved by anything other than Bitcoin in this whole crypto space. Like literally the only thing that's happened is gambling, whether in the form of DeFi or whether in the form of ICOs, whether in the form of, VC funded pump and dumps, like all of it is just been gambling. All the trading stuff is just gambling. So they've innovated in gambling, and they've managed to actually make art even more stupid. So like Gigi said it perfectly. He said NFTs, everything people don't understand about cryptography and everything they don't understand about art mixed into one. Like literally they've turned art into shit, and they've incentivized people to just draw stupid JPEGs, conflate digital signatures with art and degenerate the art for the sake of selling someone art or a digital signature no one actually knows for a bunch of money. Like it's just, I don't know, everything this space touches, it ruins, all under the guise of trying to pretend to be a variation of Bitcoin. So anyway, that's my mini rant to kick this off.
No, I think that's interesting. I just came back recently from a blockchain conference, and there's a lot of people that say blockchain, not Bitcoin. And then we say Bitcoin, not blockchain. But it was really interesting because there are all these people who are so passionate about, I guess, creating projects and revolutionizing different industries using this type of technology, but in a completely different way, whether it's art, like you mentioned with the NFTs, or sports or ticketing or real estate. So I guess, you have the Balajis out there who say, I believe in Bitcoin, but it's not going to be the only thing. We are going to have these DAOs and we're going to have different tokens. Like, how do you explain that to someone that's, coming in? And obviously some of these are very attractive because maybe they are interested in the gaming or the art world, or the price point is a lot less expensive than Bitcoin. How do you frame the argument to them that Bitcoin is the thing that they should focus on?
I've given up framing it to them. I tell them to go buy all the NFTs that they can and go invest in all the blockchain projects that they can, because they deserve to lose all their money. I'm sick and tired of trying to save people from their own stupidity. So like I learned a good heuristic yesterday. It's like, imagine there's a cliff, and you're all standing near the cliff, and someone looks over the cliff and he falls off. The rest of us will see him fall and die, and we'll be like, you know what, we should step away from the cliff. And that's a good thing, because you have the individual act as a mechanism to show the limits of risk for the rest of the group, right? But in today's day and age, like, we seem to tie ourselves, so we're all holding a rope together, and this is basically how socialism works. Is like we're all holding the rope, and someone falls off the side of the cliff, and the rest of everyone pulls him up, and he then believes that he can't fall off the cliff. So more people start looking over the cliff and they fall, and there's fewer and fewer people holding the rope, pulling everyone on. And at some point, enough people look over the cliff that they all fall, and we all fall with them. So my solution to this is now I just like chop my chains and let them all look over the cliff, and they can all fall and die together because I couldn't care less about them anymore. So that's my new revelation, is that NFTs and blockchain, in a conversation with those people, NFTs and blockchain are totally the way to go. Please buy as much of that shit as you can.
So do you think that Bitcoin will end up being literally the only digital asset ever? Or do you see, a situation where, as this metaverse or whatever they're creating emerges, that there will be other digital assets that don't serve the function of hard money or sound money, but have some other utility or use case?
I think the world's going to really splinter here, is that, people like, here's the thing. There is a whole swathe of people with basically, I don't know, they have slavery in their DNA. And they're the kind of people who will go and buy fake stuff on metaverses, and they'll go and, choose to live in that sort of a environment. And by all means, can do whatever they want. I think Bitcoin, what it will do is it'll bring about a resurgence in the innovation and the opportunity of atoms, the world of atoms, no longer the world of bits and bytes. So like software is eating the world has deranged to the point where people are willing to pay for virtual fucking sneakers and, lie in bed with the Oculus, thing on. Like, it's just out of control. So for me, that's so detached from reality. And, with a bit of luck, those people will stop procreating, and their line will end with them over the next generation. Like, so for me, that's their own trap, and by all means they can do whatever they want. But in terms of in terms of other digital assets, yeah, by all means there will be the creation of other digital. A domain, a website is a digital asset, right? A software business is a digital asset. So that there has been and there will continue to be digital assets. But to think that they're going to come in the form of competing monetary networks to Bitcoin is just, first of all, stupid. But then, second of all, it's like, even building assets, on the Bitcoin stack, even that's premature. Bitcoin's still, what is it, 12 years, 13 years old? Like, this is something that's going to be around for thousands of years. And here we are trying to put the cart before the horse, when, Bitcoin's still $1 trillion, quote unquote asset class. Like, it still hasn't formed. Like, Bitcoin's got to go through its eras. It was an uncensorable payment network. Now it's a digital collectible. Next, it'll be pristine collateral, and then it'll be money. And through that progression, like, we still have like we haven't even come out of the second era as a digital collectible into the third era as pristine collateral. Like, we're still at the juncture of those two eras. And that juncture is going to take a couple of years. And then the Bitcoin is pristine collateral probably can take a decade. And then Bitcoin is money. And it's only after that, really, where the emergence of codifying and digitizing assets actually starts to make sense, and where you'll get alpha over Bitcoin in a meaningful way. But between now and then, it's all just noise and literally just gambling. And the guys who are going to make all the money are the A16Zs of the world, who will pump and dump this on the lemmings.
Yeah, I really think that Bitcoin shouldn't even be in the category of the rest of these. And I like when, Michael Saylor comes out and really, really calls it out and just says the rest of these are securities, and we don't know what the regulation is going to look like. Bitcoin has been recognized and basically universally accepted that this is digital property and this is a pristine savings technology. So I think it's going to be interesting how it plays out, because I almost see it as people trying to compare like the internet or email protocol to just a bunch of websites. And some of them might take off and might survive and might, be successful, but the majority, like in the .com bubble, could just come crashing down.
I don't think any of them survive. Zero. No, like nothing, nada, zero. Like any potential incarnation of Bitcoin is just, it's not even like a website. Think of it, the better analogy is the internet and AOL. Okay, so it's a competing internet. That they're all gone. Zero. They're done. There's no hope for them. They will not exist.
Yes, I'm a toxic Bitcoin maximalist. It's true. It's true. Well, the only Bitcoin is truly decentralized, for one thing. Everything else is either relatively or absolutely centralized when compared to Bitcoin. So decentralization is one of the 2 or 3 top elements of the Bitcoin protocol that make it money and allow it to compete with gold and allow it to, for countries like El Salvador, to make it legal tender. So no country could make anything else legal tender because they're not decentralized. In the case of Ethereum, it's mostly concentrated on corporate server farms, easy to take down. They've reversed transactions many times. There's a huge pre-mine, so it's a bit of a pump and dump. It's an exit scam. It was never actually meant to be scarce, and it was never meant to be decentralized. And those are the words directly from Vitalik Buterin, who told me those exact things in the months leading up to the launch of Ethereum. So I have no reason to believe that they would ever be, Ethereum would ever be decentralized or scarce in any way. There's never been an audit. We have no idea how many are out there. Plus, the transition to proof of stake means that it's even less secure than it's ever been. It's never been worse. And that's everything else is worse than that. So going forward, people talk about market cap. It's not really a relevant measure. I think you have to look at what percentage of global hash rate is being used by Bitcoin. Last I checked, it was close to 90%. And of course, that'll go to 100% as Bitcoin starves all these other projects out of from their energy usage. So these other altcoins, they simply will get starved of energy. They'll starve to death. Same thing with gold. Same thing with fiat money. There simply won't be any energy available for anything else but Bitcoin. I think it's helpful to think of Bitcoin as a 51% attack on the global energy supply. So 51% or more of all energy on the planet will be dedicated to Bitcoin. And as such, everything else will starve to death, which is fine because Bitcoin is perfect money. We've been searching for it for 300,000 years. And hopefully, as a species, we can get out of the rut we've been in for thousands of years because of the lack of adequate money just to satisfy our needs as the species.
So what do you think about people's arguments that there needs to be this utility coin, or that there's an advantage to some of these other protocols and blockchains because you can build on top of them, and we're going to have this future with metaverses and tokenized companies, and that Bitcoin will exist alongside that, but we also need to create utility-driven blockchain projects?
Well, they're just not secure, and they can disappear and evaporate in an instant. So that doesn't sound good to me. There's no protection. They're all similar to Enron. Remember, Enron was this incredibly innovative energy company. One day it was worth $80 billion. The next day it was worth 0. So anything that's not Bitcoin can literally be evaporated in a minute, in a heartbeat. And many of them, exactly what will happen to them. Another negative against Ethereum, of course, is that the SEC has not definitively said whether they consider it a security or not. I believe that they will make a ruling that it is a security. That puts another nail in the Ethereum coffin. All NFTs, everything in the metaverse can be classified as a security. They're all securities. How do I know? Well, I was a stockbroker for many years, and I sold securities for many years. And when the ICO boom was in 2017, and the NFT boom and the DeFi boom, I was pointing out that, hey, these are securities. They don't compete with Bitcoin. They're all going to be regulated out of existence. And we see it already with the Facebook project. Remember, they were going to come out with the Gemini coin, which they called the Diem project. They are now in liquidation because it's a security, and the SEC shut them down. So that's the fate that awaits everything that's not Bitcoin. The so-called utility value of these projects, first of all, as money, they have no utility. So as money, they serve no utility. So then you have to ask yourself, well, then what utility are they fulfilling? And the answer is, so far they haven't figured that out yet. They claim to somehow be a variation on the Bitcoin theme, but they fail to meet even the most basic threshold of what defines and characterizes Bitcoin. So they're not even able to differentiate themselves in any way whatsoever. As far as I can tell, not a single differentiating point that can be considered not easily debunked so far. I haven't seen a single one, and I've been following this, of course, for 11 years, and have a history in having invented the first patented virtual currency back in 1996. So I know this business pretty well, probably better than anybody in the world.
Wow, that's right. Yeah, the movie one. So do you think all of them will go to zero eventually? What does that mean for the Coinbases and the Geminis of the world?
Well, the first question is that yes, all of them will effectively go to zero against Bitcoin for the simple reason that they'll be starved to death of energy. Nobody will bother dedicating any energy. As far as the exchanges that deal in all of these altcoins, they will pivot and find a new business. You know, that happens all the time. They don't have some kind of special dispensation to be immune from the laws of business, right? They have to deal with the laws of business, and the laws of business suggest that they will be they'll have to pivot towards some other business models.
I am a proud Bitcoiner. I reject the diminutive of an epithet that is the term maxi, but nevertheless, yes, Bitcoiner I am.
Okay, so tell me your point of view, because there are a lot of people out there who see Bitcoin as sort of out of reach. It's very expensive. They see these massive gains they can make on the altcoins. So what's your argument for why Bitcoin, not altcoins?
Well, it's so funny that you mention it, because a fairly well-known younger Bitcoiner this morning has been getting carried away in the altcoin bull market. He's a great guy, actually. In fact, has created some cool little websites about Bitcoin and stuff like that. And he tweeted out like you could basically buy any of the top 10 altcoins and make like 3 to 50x the returns of Bitcoin. And I think this is a narrative that's promulgated by altcoiners and by crypto trading platforms, believing that this is true. So I went back and I actually looked at the top 10 non-Bitcoin coins from a year ago, and I checked it out, and 5 of them are down and 5 of them are up. And none of them are up more than 2x except for BNB, which, Binance just had like a nice run or whatever. And so I would argue that 9 out of 10 coins, first of all, you lost on 5 of them versus Bitcoin. And the other 4 were up so little versus Bitcoin that I would say their risk adjusted return was dramatically lower, because you basically can just buy and hold Bitcoin forever and not worry about it, not have to trade it, not have to get out at the top. So the whole narrative is just false. And that's the best of times in an altcoin bull market. So I think they just don't have a leg to stand on from that perspective, let alone, again, I kind of got at a little bit of it. These things are completely unproven, if not outright scams. And so when you're thinking about, just kind of set it and forget it, a place to store your value and buy something that you actually know about and actually can believe in, there's only one thing like that. That's just Bitcoin.
So what do you say to the people who agree that Bitcoin is that form of digital gold or digital store of value, but they see some of these other coins as technology projects that have more utility and they want to invest in them in the same way that people invest in stocks?
Well, you don't actually own any cash flows coming from them. You have no stake in the ownership. The managers and owners of the project are the ones who actually own that. So you don't, it's not the same as stocks at all. So it's probably like just a faulty comparison, and to be determined whether there ends up being any actual real world value for any of this. Right now, the only utility in utility tokens is for speculation. And so they're actually just speculations on speculation. And I think this was really clearly laid out in Only the Strong Survive, Google that, by Alan Farrington and Big Al. Great paper that kind of just explains exactly how this works. But we know that DeFi is about 1 to 1.5% retail use. It's actually all just like institutional traders kind of doing this stuff and playing little shell games with each other. and there's no real world value being delivered. It's just basically like a giant zero-sum Ponzi game.
Do you think we need to decentralize and tokenize everything?
I would like to see finance shrink back to its historical norms of like 3 or 4% of GDP, not go up from 15 or 20% to the 50% or more that, you know, altcoiners seem to dream of. I think we need less financialization, more productive activity in the economy. People should do work, not just trade.
And did you go on a journey of Bitcoin to altcoins to Bitcoin like so many people did, or were you always Bitcoin only?
Is that how professional reporters define the shitcoin horseshoe?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, like many others before me, in particular, you know, people that came from the startup world, you know, I'm like ex-Google, Microsoft, and was working in startups in Silicon Valley and stuff like that for a long time. You know, I discovered Bitcoin, and then I went on, in my case, an 11-month journey in altcoin land, listening to Andreessen Horowitz and, you know, Fred Wilson and all these people that I had, you know, come to rely on for good signal when it comes to SaaS, you know, businesses or video ad tech marketplaces, things like that. And they were all saying crypto, crypto, crypto. Back then they were all pushing basically friction tokens, which was like a previous narrative. It was like, hey, everybody needs their own Chuck E. Cheese token and for their ecosystem, like, you know, Ethereum gas or something like that. And yeah, I was just like woefully misled, and I bought it hook, line, and sinker for a while. And thankfully, some staunch Bitcoiners like Jimmy Song and Safe and Matt and Marty and Lavera and Jan Pritzker and some of these people through their writing and their podcasting pulled me out. And so, yeah, my 11-month journey into altcoin land resulted in me being focused on exclusively Bitcoin by like spring of 2018.
Awesome. Well, obviously you devoted a whole company to just Bitcoin. A lot of people probably think that's, you know, that's not a risky move, but you're not going to make as much, obviously, because these other exchanges make the majority of their money on trades with the altcoins. So why did you feel that that was so important to be a Bitcoin only company and exchange?
I'm really, really, really bad at selling things that I don't believe in. I'm like absolutely horrible at it. I actually once in business school, my summer internship was at Vitamin Water. And then I realized all the executives drink Diet Coke because Vitamin Water has too many calories. And I couldn't go back and work for Vitamin Water after school. So that's the kind of the vibe. So I don't know, man, to each their own. Like there are mercenary traders and investors and like platform owners or whatever that, you know, provide infrastructure for the crypto industry or whatever, and they justify it through whatever, this is what the market demands. I know that I really enjoy working with the end customer, the one who's actually going to buy the product. So I'm really like, I get really turned on by working on B2C businesses, not like B2B or B2B2C or something like that. And if you're actually talking to the end customer, ideally you want to sell them something that's good for them, something where when you talk about the product and you try your best to tell the truth, that's compelling. And in this space, that's only Bitcoin. There's only one thing you can actually sell to the end customer that you can actually feel good about, and that's Bitcoin.
Okay. And last question, you know, we're all believers in free markets. So are you okay with people essentially gambling with altcoins and maybe seeing these huge profits and then maybe slamming them into Bitcoin?
Well, crypto trader friends, that's FRENZ, you should make sure that you are not trading with your entire stack. Your long-term HODL stack should be in Bitcoin. And you should make sure that if you do get lucky enough to catch one of these popcorn alts, as I used to call them, it's actually what everybody called them back in the ICO days, popcorn alts, make sure you rotate that back into Bitcoin. That's the benchmark that you want to beat. It's going to be a Bitcoinized world in the future, not a dollar world. And so your denominator should be Bitcoin. And you know, so if you're one of those lucky few that's putting in the 40 hours a week and have been doing that for the last 4 years, and you're going to survive as a crypto trader, you know, like all of my crypto fund manager friends who keep the bulk of their wealth in Bitcoin, follow the smart money, do the right thing, hodl for the long term with your long-term stack.